Hello, hello, hello. Jordan Sheridan. I believe I am live on YouTube, Facebook. Let's see. Bunch of places. Am I live? Am I live? Do. Online on Periscope. Says I'm online. Am I live on YouTube? Facebook. Sorry, folks. Just waiting for the shoe to drop. All right, looks like I'm live. It is Thursday, August 9th. I'm coming to you live from New York. Very sunny day out. I'll get to my inability to walk in a little bit. It's been a very interesting day. I did physical therapy yesterday for my back surgery that I had a few months ago, and I think I might have torn both of my calves. So those are first world problems, though, because we literally have America supporting and refueling and continuing to ally Saudi Arabia in its continued genocide of Yemen. If you've been following, there was a major Saudi strike on a bus of children in Yemen, and there were several deaths. To ally and Saudi Arabia. It is, as usual, barely getting coverage in the corporate media and barely getting any play in terms of actually telling people why is it that the Yemen war is going on? Why is it that the United States is contributing to Saudi Arabia slaughtering Yemenis and people in Yemen? So I want to get to that. Also want to get to Alexandria Ocasio Cortez last night beat the living daylight out of CNN, and it was a beautiful thing to watch. If you haven't seen it yet, she said something that isn't often said on corporate media or cable news, which is, why do you guys never have a problem? Why do we never have a problem gathering the money for endless war and tax cuts for rich people? But we do have problems. We do have problems finding enough money for healthcare, education, and all the investments that we need to make for actual working people. So I'm going to play you that clip because I think it is one of the best actual points a progressive has made in corporate media, and frankly, I'm surprised CNN didn't cut her mic. I really thought when I was watching that, Chris Cuomo, who obviously works for CNN, was going to cut her mic. So I want to show you that too. I also want to get into more attacks on Bernie Sanders. Ever since the election Tuesday night, Bernie Sanders, the socialism is dying. Bernie Sanders movement is dying, all because some of his candidates that he endorsed did not win. So the corporate media likes to do that whenever Bernie Sanders is involved. If he goes down to campaign for people, if he endorses people, if they lose, that means the death of Bernie's movement, and that means the death of socialism, as I reported yesterday. So definitely press the share button. I'm live on YouTube. I'm live on Facebook. I'm live on Periscope. All of these social channels are throttling the hell out of my channel and other progressive media. So I definitely need you to share the videos so we could get more people watching and make sure more people know when I'm live. I'm going to try and go as much as possible around this time in the afternoon, so about 2:30 Eastern time. Thank you, Taramel. $2 in the super chat. That's right. I have a super chat on YouTube, so you could leave $2, $5, $10, whatever you could leave. That's what's going to help feed me, but more importantly than that, help get me back in the field. I'm not asking for money for my health. If you saw my reporting in Chicago, if you see my reporting in Flint recently, if you saw my reporting in Virginia covering the Mountain Valley pipeline, we are covering everything that corporate media will not touch. And frankly, we got to keep it real here. It's not just corporate media. Most independent media are not sending reporters out, even commentators out, to cover Flint, to cover the Bay. I'm talking to activists down at the Bayou Bridge pipeline in Louisiana. There's protest against that pipeline. There's I don't want to call it a mini Standing Rock, but there's definitely a movement brewing in Louisiana against the totally unnecessary, toxic pipeline, the Bayou Bridge pipeline. And I'm thinking about going down to cover it, but I got to keep it real. You need to grow. We need to grow the funding. We need to grow our Patreon. If you don't know, it's patreon.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports. That's patreon.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports. If you can't do a monthly subscription, you could always contribute once in a blue moon whenever you have the funding, either via Super Chat or paypal.me/status coup. So without further ado, and when Ty gets back from vacation, I'm going to try to figure out how to play clips for Facebook. So Facebook, you're not going to see the clip, but you'll be able to hear it. I want to play a clip from Alexandria Ocasio Cortez on CNN last night because I honestly thought it was the strongest answer I've heard a progressive provided on corporate media. It was on CNN. I got to give credit to Chris Cuomo because I truly thought he was going to cut her off for making this point, which is a point that is obvious. It defies common sense that the corporate media doesn't cover it this way. It defies common sense why the corporate media is never asking those Republicans or those corporate Democrats, well, how are you going to pay for this war? How are you going to pay for these bombs in Syria? How are you going to pay for these tax cuts for Trump's donors and corporations? Why is it that Jeff Bezos is getting all these subsidies for another headquarters for Amazon? Who's going to pay for that? Never a question who's going to pay for the corporate welfare and the military-industrial complex. Never need to discuss that, which is the point Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez made on CNN. So let me play this clip for you, and then we'll talk about it on the flip side. Hold on. Here we go.
You get into the partisan issue of money, which is, man, do you want to spend a lot of my tax money on these proposals that you and Bernie and others have? Medicare for all, college tuition, maybe even housing, that the Green New Deal that you have, it is all very expensive, especially on the single payer side, and that it gives people sticker shock. Even in Bernie's home state, they got sticker shock. They couldn't get it done in his state because of how expensive it is. And that was an 11% increase in taxes, 9 to 11%. Even that was too much for people. How do you pay? How do you sell it?
So first of all, the thing that we need to realize is people talk about the sticker shock of Medicare for all. They do not talk about the sticker shock of the cost of our existing system. You know, in a Koch brothers funded study, if any study is going to try to be a little bit slanted, it would be one funded by the Koch brothers. It shows that Medicare for all is actually much cheaper than the current system that we pay right now. And let's not forget that the reason that the Supreme Court upheld the Affordable Care Act is because they ruled that each of these monthly payments that everyday Americans make is a tax. And so while it may not seem like we pay that tax on April 15th, we pay it every single month, or we do pay a tax season if we don't buy, these plans off of the exchange. So we're paying for this system. We Americans have the sticker shock of healthcare as it is. And what we're also not talking about is why aren't we incorporating the cost of all the funeral expenses of those who die because they can't afford access to healthcare? That is part of the cost of our system. Why don't we talk about the cost of reduced productivity because of people who need to go on disability, because of people who are not able to participate in our economy, because they're having issues like diabetes or they don't have access to the healthcare that they need. I think at the end of the day, we see that this is not a pipe dream. Every other developed nation in the world does this. Why can't America? And that is the question that we need to ask. We have done these things before. We write unlimited blank checks for war. We just wrote a $2 trillion check for that tax cut, the GOP tax cut, and nobody asked those folks how are they going to pay for it. So my question is, why is it that our pockets are only empty when it comes to education and healthcare for our kids? Why are our pockets only empty when we talk about 100% renewable energy that is going to save this planet and allow our children to thrive? We only have empty pockets when it comes to the morally right things to do. But when it comes to tax cuts for billionaires and when it comes to unlimited war, we seem to be able to invent that money very easily. And to me, it belies a lack of moral priorities that people have right now, especially the Republican Party.
Preach! Preach, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And I don't know if you saw that high-level production for Facebook so you could hear it. I put the microphone, I tilted the microphone. Ty is on vacation right now, but when he gets back, we're going to figure out how. For some reason, I could figure out I'm using OBS, which is a kind of a text system to show you graphics and video. And for some reason, it's only working on YouTube and Periscope. I'm live on YouTube, Periscope, and Facebook right now. For some reason, I haven't been able to figure it out for Facebook. So apologize for anyone watching on Facebook. Hope you'll still share the video, because as you've seen, Facebook, YouTube, Periscope is suppressing the hell out of this channel and other independent media. So we definitely need you guys to share and support, whether it's financially or just sharing the videos. We appreciate it. So Alexandria Ocasio Cortez literally just made a point that is never even allowed. It's never even allowed to be made on corporate media. And I got to give credit. Facebook folks probably didn't see it. But did you see Chris Cuomo's face? Did you see his face when she was dropping the knowledge? I didn't know if he, was holding in diarrhea, excuse my French, or if something else was going on. It looked like a mix of a pulled muscle or a brain aneurysm Chris Cuomo was suffering from when Alexandria Ocasio was basically subtly, it was very subtle, but Ocasio-Cortez was basically saying, why is it that politicians, and CNN, by the way, only have the bandwidth to ask how are we going to pay for healthcare for all? Why is it that politicians only have the bandwidth to ask how are we going to pay for this Green New Deal? Why is it that politicians never, ever, it never dawns on them, how much do these wars cost? How much does these tax cuts cost? How much does this deregulation cost? How much does more and more favors for Amazon, Jeff Bezos, the Walton family, and on and on and on cost? How much does it cost? Because I can tell you one thing. Corporate media, they don't care about those things. You want to know why? Because it benefits them. Tax cuts for the rich, deregulation. And they don't go to the Flints of the world. They don't go to communities where people are struggling, not only for healthcare, but to put food on the table. They don't go to communities that are being affected by pipelines. No. They don't go to those areas. So that's why it doesn't dawn upon them. I worked at MSNBC. I worked at Fox News. I've worked in digital media. These are very nice buildings these anchors report from. These are very nice cities these anchors report from. They get paid a lot of money to report a whole lot of nothing. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez basically was saying, why is it that we don't have money for anything moral that helps the masses, but we always have money for things that help no one? And why is it that my feed right now looks like it is buffering? That's interesting that I'm talking about money for the rich, money for the corporations, endless war, and my feed seems to be buffering. What do you think about that, Jen Dice, my business partner, premier conspiracy theorist? I wonder if YouTube doesn't like this kind of progressive proletariat kind of talk. It's also very interesting that yesterday, around the same time, I had 100-something viewers, and now I have 20. That's kind of interesting. A lot of interesting things going on. But getting back to Ocasio-Cortez, this is part of why she won. She out-hustled Joe Crowley in New York. She introduced herself to a lot of people in the Bronx and Queens. Joe Crowley took it for granted, but that kind of message makes sense to the masses. It makes sense even to people in the Midwest. I know Senator Tammy Baldwin says, Ocasio-style progressivism, Bernie Sanders-style socialism will not work in the Midwest. Well, I got news for you. Trump ran, even though he was lying, Trump ran on some of those themes. Trump ran on enough with the war state. That's what he ran on. Trump ran on enough fake trade that's only helping corporations and the deregulatory state and not helping average Americans. Meanwhile, sending their jobs to China, Mexico, and elsewhere. That's a lot of what he ran on because I was there, I heard it. I, at the time, told the audience when I was at the Young Turks, this is BS, obviously, but he did run on some progressive themes. Make no mistake about it. He did run on some progressive themes. But in large part, he was able to win because of that. Hold on, I'm checking something. For some reason, I don't know why it's buffering so bad. Anyway, so when you hear progressive messages, don't believe corporate media that, oh, that's nice, but that won't win the people in the Midwest. Progressive ideals have already won in the Midwest. Why do you think Bernie Sanders upset Hillary Clinton in Michigan, right? Why do you think Bernie Sanders won Wisconsin? Why do you think Trump won Michigan? Trump won Wisconsin. It wasn't all the racist dog whistling. It was because these workers, most of the Midwest was against the bailout of 2008, if you remember. Most of the Midwest is against corporate cronyism. They're just hoodwinked by a fake populace. That's what happened. And I can tell you, it's not so anecdotal. I probably covered 30 to 50 Trump rallies. I can't tell you how many Trump supporters I asked, if you weren't going to vote for Trump, who would you vote for? Did you know what they told me? Bernie Sanders. Not making it up. That's what they told me. So it is not a pipe dream what Alexandria Ocasio Cortez is saying. And by the way, going back to the election, it's also not it's not a nothing. Brent Welder in Kansas, right? There was some issue. A lot of people think, well, why is it that he was up and all of a sudden he was up? He was winning, and all of a sudden there was an issue with the voting machines or something like that, and then he's losing. I've looked into it briefly. I don't see anything that's that out of control or that suspect, but he only lost by 3 percentage points in Kansas. Kansas is very, very red. Kansas is very, very red. And to remind you, YouTube folks, this is a super chat, so any contributions help. We're trying to get funding from wherever we could get it. Patreon, PayPal, and YouTube Super Chat. So Jen could tell you how to do that. So what I'm saying, forget just Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is the Democratic Party not paying attention? They keep thinking that the only way to win is by money. Because Hillary Clinton wasn't outspent 2-1, right? She was Hillary Clinton outspent Trump 2-1. The Democratic Party, they only think the only way to win is money. But Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is showing not just by winning, but by going on CNN. Let me tell you something. People in the Midwest watching her saying, why is it that we only have questions about money when it comes to war? Why is it that we only have questions about money when it comes to tax cuts? That's a very attractive message. I don't care if it's a man saying it, a woman saying it, a Muslim saying it, a Latino saying it, or a marshmallow saying it. That speaks to people in Flint and Detroit and parts of Wisconsin and parts of Illinois and parts of Pennsylvania. I know because I went to these rallies, Bernie rallies, Trump rallies, even other candidates that were in the Midwest. And it's not just the Midwest, by the way. It's not just the Midwest. Prices and inflation are going up all over this country. You go to California, you go to Oregon, you go to Washington State, you go to New Mexico. These are all places I'd like to go because I get stories in all the time from the audience. We just need the funding. This is grassroots, baby. I'm not with an outlet anymore that has a ton of money, so we are depending on the audience to fund us, and we will get there. And definitely, if you haven't seen it yet, if you're watching on Facebook or Periscope, go to my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports. We got videos up from Chicago, Flint, Virginia, where we've been in the last few months. But when I was watching that Ocasio-Cortez clip, my first thought was, is the Democratic Party paying attention here? Because this is a winning message. But the reason it's not that they're not paying attention. They're purposely ignoring the message. Because in the end, when you are Nancy Pelosi, when you are Chuck Schumer, when you are Dick Durbin, when you are Steny Hoyer, you've been in the Senate or Congress for 30 to 40 years. It's like if you ever watch Shawshank Redemption, never fail to bring up a Shawshank analogy, my favorite movie. It's like when old Brooks, who was at the Shawshank prison for 50 years, finally gets out. He doesn't know what the hell to do with himself. He's institutionalized. He's institutionalized at that point. All he knows is prison and prison life. So he can't take it. And unfortunately, he sends his birdie out and he hangs himself, which I'm not endorsing. Don't do that. But my point is, these people like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and all these Democratic leaders, and to a certain extent, the fresh faces, the Cory Bookers of the world, and the Kirsten Gillibrands of the world, and the Kamala Harrises of the world, and that really beautiful Kennedy, Joe Kennedy, the third, second, or the third, who the hell knows? They only know money. And they think Hillary Clinton didn't lose because she didn't have a message. She lost because she was a bad candidate. Well, I got news for you. She lost because she only cared about money and she had no message. Stronger together, not a message. Sorry. Not a message. So bravo to Alexandria Ocasio Cortez. I'd like to see more of that. Honestly, you know, for all his warts, Anthony Weiner, for example, for every stupid thing he did, he gave one hell of a speech on the floors of Congress back in the day about the crony Republicans and the corrupt Republicans, and he even took on his own party. We need more Ocasio-Cortezes, even if they don't win electorally, to push themselves in corporate media, to help boost independent media with that kind of message. Because I promise you, I have been out in the field all over this country. That is a winning message in red states. That is a winning message in states with a lot of manufacturing and plants. It's just, you got to tweak the message sometimes to where you are. But it is a winning message. That is for sure. And Lauren Steiner points out James Thompson won in Kansas by a lot. Yeah, I forgot James Thompson. And as I reported yesterday, you have right to work being overturned in Missouri. You had, I believe, Wesley Bell, I think was his name, in Missouri, who won for prosecutor, beating Robert McCullough, who I could tell you, having been in jail in St. Louis, Robert McCullough was a big part of the reason many people in St. Louis say it's still Jim Crow in St. Louis. These are historic victories. There were other lower level victories, and our revolution endorsed candidates that won. It's not always going to be the Abdul El Sayed winning. It's not always going to be Cori Bush winning. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, those victories are not going to pile up right away. It is a slow build. Bernie Sanders has always said, and I saw him tweet it, I believe yesterday, saying movement building is not a temporary thing. It's a forever thing. It starts with our generation and keeps on going and going. And sometimes you have small victories followed by many losses. And sometimes you have big victories all at once. It's all about not taking your foot off the gas. Not taking your foot off the gas. So I say bravo to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Moving on from a more, I think, promising thing to a downright shameful thing. And honestly, it would not surprise me if, as I start to report on this, if my stream starts buffering, if people on Facebook start having problems, because it has been shown that corporate, let's not forget, by the way, it is no longer YouTube. This is FewTube. And you can steal it from me if you want, but I came up with it. This is FewTube. And Facebook, I got to come up with a clever name for Facebook because it's not for all of us anymore. It's not for independent journalists. It's not for independent journalists on the left or the right. These platforms are now for corporations. These platforms are now so that you will see CNN in your stream, so you will see MSNBC in your stream, so you will see the Washington Post, so you will see the BuzzFeeds of the world and the Vices in the world and nobody else. For God's sakes, Jimmy Dore's videos nowadays, he did a video on this. I think Jimmy Dore's videos, when he's done, they're recommending people to MSNBC. Do you see anything in common between Jimmy Dore and MSNBC? Hell no. My videos, literally, are not being seen. I can't tell you how many people contact me every day and say, Jordan, I don't even see your tweets, and I follow you. I don't see your videos, and I'm a subscriber. I don't see you when you're live on Facebook. So they are purposely throttling and suppressing independent journalists. So that's why we need everybody. And obviously, every viewer is different. Not everyone has bucks to go to Patreon or PayPal or Super Chats or whatever. So that's up to you. You know, I think, unfortunately, and I just had a conversation about this with somebody who works in engineering. Unfortunately, we are not in a time anymore. We're no longer living in a time when you have equal access to information and content. So if you want the truth, unfortunately, you're going to have to help pay for that truth. Some people have said, I'm never going to pay for news. Then you're not going to get the truth, because journalists need to eat, and our content is no longer being able to be seen. It's one thing if I was reporting in Flint and Chicago and other places and nobody cared. I know that's not the case, because I've been able, fortunately, while I was at TYT, to build that audience. And I care very passionately about what's going on in Flint. I was just there 2 weeks ago. 4 years later, there's 3 to 5 hour lines wrapped around for blocks at churches to get 2 cases of water, because the governor of that state shut down the government paid for water pods. Meanwhile, I have a report that I'm trying to get out that corporate media won't touch that proves that the state of Michigan cheated on the water testing. I can't get it out because they don't care if it's not Trump, Russia, or Playboy models. That's the truth. Chicago is a war zone. I'm not saying that because it's a catchy phrase. All you got to do is go down to certain parts that Ty and I went down to. It is a war zone in America. Zero coverage. 73 people shot in a weekend, 11 of them killed. Rahm Emanuel gives a press conference basically blaming it on illegal guns and violent criminals instead of gentrification and all that crap. And all the beautification and money he has flooded in to help the north side and downtown. No coverage. Mass shootings. Cover for 3 days. Back to Trump. Back to Russia. And the next story I'm about to cover, barely any coverage. So if you don't know, there is a genocide. Oh, Lauren Steiner says, Facebook should be regulated like a public utility, if not nationalized. I agree. I totally agree. Honestly, if you don't notice, I'm fed up. Because you want to know something? Of course, I know I'm going off in tangents. I'm going to get to Yemen in 1 second. But of course, I need to eat. And Lauren does some independent journalism, and she needs to pay the bills. But it's not just about Lauren, or I, or Jimmy, or Kyle from Secular Talk, or Mike from the Humanist Report, or Jamal Thomas, or Lee Camp, or fill in the blank. The people that are really suffering are the communities that are only getting coverage from everyone I just mentioned. Because it's those people in Chicago who I'm covering their protests, but nobody's seeing what's going on. Nobody's hearing what they're telling me. Nobody's hearing their horror stories. And you could replicate that for Flint. You could replicate that when I was in Virginia covering the Mountain Valley Pipeline, which, by the way, I'm not crediting us, but we were the only national journalists on the ground, Jen and I. They have shut down that pipeline temporarily, which is a huge victory. No coverage of that. The communities that are not getting their message out, whether it's through independent journalists like me, or if Jimmy Dore is covering the Syria war as one of the few people, and America's role in it, or whatever independent journalists are covering. When you don't get a notification, when you don't see it in your feed, that is intentional censorship that not only hurts the journalists that need to make a living, it's hurting Flint. It's hurting Chicago. Frankly, I was just talking to Jen. If you want the behind the scenes, here's the behind the scenes. I was just talking to Jen this morning. You know what? Ty's on vacation right now, but maybe we should go to Puerto Rico. No one's covering it anymore, and it's a freaking disaster. The government finally today decided to update that 1,400 people were killed as a result of Hurricane Maria. And by the way, I guarantee you it's a lot more than that. At first they said, 40 to 60 people were killed? Now it's 1,400 to 1,500. The last person I spoke with in Puerto Rico said it could be in the 3,000 to 5,000 range. But unfortunately, we're saying, all right, well, if we go to Puerto Rico, yeah, people would love the content, but who the hell's going to see it? YouTube is suppressing this channel from getting our content out. Same thing on Facebook. So who would see it? It's not only because it would cost us a lot more money than we could make. It's not just about the money. Why are we going to go down to cover stuff that people aren't going to see on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube? It's infuriating for the communities that so desperately need the word out about their emergencies. From a war zone in Chicago to other places to Yemen. As you know, the United States has been refueling Saudi warplanes that are dropping bombs and missiles on Yemeni weddings, and overnight or this morning on a school bus with children. A school bus with children in Yemen. I'm going to read this from the big bad boogeyman, RT America, who frankly does better reporting than the majority of the American corporate media, which is a shame. A bus carrying children in northern Yemen was attacked on Thursday, hit by an airstrike filed by the Saudi-led coalition. The attack killed dozens, many of whom were children under the age of 10, the Red Cross has confirmed. The bus was in the Dayan market in northern Sa'ada, a Houthi rebel stronghold, when it was attacked on Thursday morning. Following an attack, an international committee of the Red Cross-supported hospital has received dozens of dead and wounded, the Red Cross confirmed, adding that, quote, under international humanitarian law, civilians must be protected during conflict. Well, obviously, international law doesn't even matter because the United States breaks it pretty much on a daily basis, in addition to our allies in Saudi Arabia and elsewhere. Scores killed, even more injured, most under the age of 10, said Johannes Brewer, head of the International Committee of the Red Cross in Yemen, adding that the organization is sending additional supplies to hospitals to cope with the influx. The ICRC has now confirmed that the bodies of 29 children have been recovered, all of whom were aged under 15 years old. I just want to tell you, let me read this statement to you and then read the headline on CNN right now. The ICRC has now confirmed that the bodies of 29 children have been recovered, all of whom were aged under 15 years old. 48 others were also injured, including 30 children. The bus was transporting civilians, including many school children, but it is not clear how many of the casualties were bus passengers and how many were pedestrians on the surrounding street. And CNN's headline right now, Trump team's counteroffer leaves Mueller with hard choices. Does that say it all, folks? The United States, which is refueling Saudi planes to be dropping bombs on school children, killing 29, wounding 30, not to mention our ships that have gone on to aid in the blockade of ports in Yemen. And Wolf Blitzer, by the way, I tweeted about this. Wolf Blitzer does a segment on this. You know, reliable stenographer, Wolf Blitzer for the CIA, for the FBI, for Homeland Security, for the Pentagon. Wolf Blitzer has never not repeated whatever the government of the United States told him to repeat. Wolf Blitzer does a segment on it and says, do we know who dropped these bombs? Who supplied these weapons? Without irony, without any mention of the United States' role in this. It goes back to what I'm always talking about, which is the out-of-touch nature of our media. And frankly, if I'm going to call it like I see it, not even independent media, including myself. I don't cover this every day, so I can't be a hypocrite. We're living in alternate realities sometimes, even in independent media, where we get caught up in Russiagate and Trump derangement syndrome, when we don't even think that there is a genocide going on in Yemen that we are helping to make happen. All because we want Saudi Arabia's oil. All because Saudi Arabia joins us against Iran. Think about that. 29 children got killed today. For what reason? I mean, actually, I shouldn't be surprised because the U.S. doesn't even care when United States children get blown up and shot. They cover it for 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, and then move on. So, of course, they're not going to give a damn about children in Yemen getting killed by our ally that we are helping to supply. I want to read this. It was a piece last year, but it's very good from The Intercept. Sorry again for Facebook if you can't see it. Saudi Arabia's years-long blockade and bombing campaign in Yemen has gotten very little coverage in the United States, even as the extreme food and fuel shortages have developed into one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. Now, as the Saudi noose on Yemen tightens, leaving 7 million people facing starvation. By the way, this was November 20th, 2017, so it's more than 7 million now. Leaving 7 million people facing starvation and another 1 million infected with cholera. The war is having its moment in the media spotlight. On Sunday, 60 Minutes aired a 13-minute segment on the war's devastating humanitarian toll. The program featured imagery of starving children and interviews with displaced people, all obtained after Saudi Arabia blocked 60 Minutes from entering the country. Quote, "You keep going like you're going, there's not going to be anybody left," David Beasley, executive director of the World Food Program, told CBS's Scott Pelley. All the children are going to be dead. Well, 29 are dead, and 30 more wounded, and we'll see what the final death count is. Coverage on such a high-profile program is frequently enough to get politicians to pay attention to an issue, and the 60 Minutes feature comes amid a growing debate about the U.S. role in the war. Just last week, the House of Representatives voted to say Congress has not authorized American military support for the Saudi-led coalition. Still, the program did not once mention that Saudi Arabia is a U.S. ally. We have such problems with Trump going to meet with Putin. No problem with the Saudi prince, who is a dictator. Oh, now he lets women drive cars. How nice of him. How nice of him to enter the 20th century, not the 21st. But let's forget all the genocide and all the murder at the hands of the Saudi Arabian prince. He comes in, does photo ops with Trumps, does photo ops with the Bushes. Oh, wait, sorry, that's whataboutism, to point out our hypocrisy and double standards. I know I can't do that. Whataboutism is a bad thing. Still, the program did not once mention that Saudi Arabia is an ally of the U.S. and that U.S. support is essential for the Saudi campaign to continue. For 2.5 years, the U.S. government has backed Saudi Arabia's intervention in Yemen every step of the way. The United States has dispatched warships to reinforce the blockade. It has refueled Saudi planes, sent the Saudi military targeting intelligence, and resupplied them with tens of billions of dollars worth of bombs. The U.S. has had the power to pull the plug on the intervention since the beginning. Bruce Riedel, a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution and a 30-year veteran of the CIA, explained last year that if the United States and the United Kingdom tonight told King Salman of Saudi Arabia, this war has to end, it would end tomorrow. The Royal Saudi Air Force cannot operate without American and British support. That means that for years, former President Barack Obama, who, by the way, just got another Courage Award, which is a joke, and now President Donald Trump had the power to stop the bombing campaign in an instant. Instead, U.S. government officials have watched Saudi Arabia use American weapons on homes, markets, farms, water infrastructure, hospitals, and children's schools. And let me add to that article also on weddings, and now school buses carrying children. This is what's going on, aided by the United States of America. But we want to talk about Russia attacking our precious democracy. We want to talk about us being a shining city on the hill or whatever that Reagan propaganda was. We want to talk about, America has its warts, but, I'll trade my spot in America versus any other country. We are commissioning the murder of innocent people around the world. And for what reason? Can anybody provide me a reason other than oil? Can anyone Provide me a reason other than keeping our geopolitical advantages over Iran and other people? Michael Cooper says, oh great, I'm only 40 minutes late. Thank YouTube for not telling you I was live. Good to see you, Michael. And for the folks watching, make sure to, as a reminder, this is a super chat. So feel free to support this reporting. Dollars on the super chat or Patreon or PayPal. Jen will remind you in the live chat. I mean, this is maddening. Mostly I cover the misery, the bomb, and the war zone that is domestically the United States of America. You go to Detroit, you go to Flint, you go to Chicago, you go to Milwaukee, you go to even parts of South Carolina, even parts of California. Some of the blocks in the United States of America, some of the neighborhoods in the United States of America look like streets in Yemen, look like streets in Baghdad during the 2000s. And they get no coverage. But I'm sorry, I don't want to hear any more about the United States' oh so holy position around the world as a holy nation, and all this nonsense about the United Nations in the United States, attacking other countries of the United Nations for their terrorism. What we're doing right now is terrorism. That's what's happening. This is terrorism sponsored by the United States, and we should call it what it is. Excuse me. And definitely share the video on Facebook, definitely share this video on YouTube and Periscope. Can't forget to drink water, folks. Wizard John, we're exceptional. Yes, we're exceptionally good at killing innocent children, at supplying terrorists with missiles and ships, and then being hypocrites and bemoaning other countries who do the same thing. We're very good at that. And the media is very good in either not covering this, or when they cover it, issuing propaganda. Because that's what it is. That's what Wolf Blitzer is doing on CNN. It's propaganda for the U.S. government. Do you think Wolf Blitzer doesn't know the United States is in part responsible for the bomb that was dropped on that school bus today? More importantly, do you think Wolf Blitzer is leaving CNN's studio today with a thought in the world about 29 children that were killed in Yemen? I'm sorry, I don't. And I have been there. I have been in CNN studios before. I have worked at MSNBC. I have worked at Fox News of all places. I know how these anchors think. I know how these journalists think. They think they are bastions of democracy. They think they are doing God's work. And they don't care. Because you want to know something? You want to know how I know? Before I worked at the Young Turks, I wasn't fortunate enough to get out into the country to see what's really going on all over the country. I wasn't fortunate enough to spend time in communities that get zero coverage on CNN, MSNBC. So I was in my own little bubble. A lot of us live in a bubble because how would you know what's going on in other places if A, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter are making sure you don't see the news, but B, you don't get out to talk to mothers on porches in Flint, or you don't get out to talk to people in East Chicago, Indiana, or you don't get out to Syria or Yemen or whatever to see what's going on. How would we know? How would we know? The problem is and this is why I'm trying to launch Status Coup. This is why we're trying to launch Status Coup, and there's the logo. Because not only do we need a media that there's nothing wrong with doing commentary from your studio or your home or whatever. I think Jimmy Dore and all of the great commentators are essential for your right to know the truth. Not the corporate truth, but the truth of what's going on. But we also need real journalism on the front lines. I think we get that in a lot of cases from places like Unicorn Riot. I think we get that in some cases from Democracy Now! When they're out in the field. But we need a lot more of it, because there's not only one way to defeat extreme conservatism or extreme neoliberalism, which I think are both pretty dangerous. Extreme neoliberalism is what has been propping up extreme conservatism for the last 40 years in America. extreme conservatism would not win, and you would not have these votes and these bills becoming laws without extreme neoliberalism. So that's why I and others are very, very critical of the Democratic Party, because they are allowing extreme conservatism to happen. But we need real independent media. We need individuals that are not in this for money, that are not in this for Twitter followers, that are not in this to climb a corporate ladder, to be willing to sacrifice big parts of their life, to go where the story is not sexy and the cameras are not. And I am talking about from Flint to Yemen. I'll be honest, I'm not personally interested in going to Yemen. I'm more passionate about what's going on right here. I think my best asset is to shine a spotlight on what's happening domestically in America. We got to get more people woke to what's going on here before we could start talking about what we're doing all over the world. But I think we need more real journalists in Yemen and Syria and Afghanistan. There's still a war going on in Afghanistan. We're inching towards year 20 in a few years. I mean, you want to go to Libya and see how that worked out? Taking out Gaddafi? Iraq? Don't listen to Bill Kristol and David Frum and these idiots. Iraq is a disaster too. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And all we could do as independent media is report the truth. We are helping to commit genocide. We are helping Saudi Arabia to commit genocide in Yemen. When we look back, we have Holocaust Remembrance Day. I'm a Jew, so obviously I know about the Holocaust. Most people do. The Holocaust, we've learned the lessons from, right? But apparently, when it's quiet genocide going on, and you don't have, I guess, Hitler, and you have a Saudi prince that, by the way, 60 Minutes did public relations for and didn't challenge him at all. We have genocide going on that's not being treated that way. In our media, it's treated as some far-off, distant war. It's not. It's not a far-off, distant war. It's a war that if we decided to back out, the war would end. Not right away, but Saudi Arabia would not be able to keep going as far as it is. And it's Obama's fault and Trump's fault. Jumping around here. Obviously, if you were awake politically, there was a big election Tuesday night. I reported on it yesterday, even though Abdul El Sayed in Michigan was not victorious, even though Cori Bush was not victorious, even though in St. Louis, even though Brent Welder was not victorious. There were a lot of progressive victories, which I did the reporting on yesterday, and you could go watch those videos. They're up now. We try to cut up all the live streams into shorter videos. But, the corporate media has really been taking this opportunity to bash the hell out of one Bernard Sanders. And we can't really be surprised, right? Because the corporate media is looking automatically to cut Bernie's off by the knees before he potentially runs again in 2020. That's what they're trying to do. So I read to you two absurd pieces from Politico yesterday. And as a reminder, folks, this is a super chat. I'm not below begging. I am not below begging. So if you like what I'm saying, if you like the stories we're covering, feel free to leave a couple dollars. You can do it in the super chat. Or become a Patreon. We're trying really hard to grow this Patreon. Part of the problem is people aren't seeing the content. Even if you're going to support us at $2 a month, $5 a month, we are focused on building out an independent media community. I don't use that word community as like some cheesy sentence. The only way we are long-term going to be able to build a sustainable network is by not relying on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, but by relying on our supporters and our viewers to fund us so we could make improvements to our website, which is almost ready, by the way. So we could go live on our website and send you notifications from our website. So we could send you text alerts from our platforms and not YouTube and Twitter. So Bernie Sanders has been under attack. Daniel, thank you, $2. Get the ball rolling, Daniel. Appreciate that. Bernie Sanders under attack. So Politico did 2 pieces on him yesterday, basically saying this is the death of socialism, and this is the death of Bernie's movement. Well, now Yahoo's decided to get into the game, which doesn't surprise me. So let's find this. Running against Bernie in 2020, it's easier than you think. That's the headline in Yahoo today. And of course, all these hot takes are coming from Tuesday's elections. So the fact that Bernie just went in for the first time for Abdul El Sayed, like 1 or 2 days before the election, that doesn't matter. The fact that Abdul El Sayed was outspent an insane amount by the Democratic nominee, Gretchen Whitmer, who had all sorts of money from Blue Cross Blue Shield and other big corporations in healthcare, didn't matter. Doesn't make it into this story. So let's read a little bit about from this establishment hot take. And Kelly on Facebook says, I'm on Patreon monthly. Keep going. Can't thank you guys enough. Matt, I'm on Patreon with Jordan. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't thank you enough. I'm trying to read from YouTube and Facebook. Lauren Steiner, you sound like public radio and TV during a fund drive. LOL. There should be a government funding of journalism, just like healthcare, education, public housing. I don't agree with that, actually. I don't want the government funding my journalism. I don't want any part of the government. But I do think, unfortunately, we now don't have a choice, as especially journalists that are trying to start from the ground up. I mean, let's keep it real, folks. I like to keep it real. I don't like to sugarcoat it. I was let go from the Young Turks. I've already said what I think about that many times. No need to get into it again. And at the Young Turks, frankly, I had a lot of built-in resources that I do not have now, including money to go out in the field and all those things. So right now, it is a grassroots revolution. I really like the position I'm in. Sure, my business partner, Jen, and I, on a day-to-day basis, we switch from one of us being down, the other one not, sometimes at the same time. This is a grassroots model to try and start off. There are not a lot of independent outlets that are actually primarily focused on in-the-field reporting. But, we can't have our cake, eat it too. A lot of people want the in-the-field reporting, but feel, we can't pay for it. So it really is up to you at the end of the day, because I know what stories need to be covered. And I also want you to help me come up with ideas for stories. But I also know it's expensive to have a cameraman, to have professionally done videos, to have journalists on the ground. For example, Jen and I knocked on 400 doors in Flint. We have a major bombshell story. I know I keep teasing it. We basically have proof that the Michigan Environmental Department, basically the state's EPA, basically cheated on Flint's water testing. Not only do we have proof, but we have confirmation from other major agencies of what we found. Corporate media, at the moment, refuses to publish it. And when I tell you the reasons, oh my God, your head will spin. This is the world we're living in. So that's why it's more important than ever to get your support. So we don't have to rely on getting stories out in national outlets and things like that, but we could do it ourselves by getting out on the ground, by spending money on advertising, by spending money to try and get sponsors, progressive sponsors, not neoliberal hack sponsors. So every level of support helps. Can't thank you guys enough. But sorry, Lauren, if I'm sounding a little too much like a radio host. At the end of the day, in life, you got to ask for what you need. You got to tell people the truth. Oh, I have Aaron Brockovich on the record in my story too, calling for criminal prosecutions. Actually, you know what, Jen, you're going to be mad at me. Jen's going to be mad at me. But I'm going to say one outlet that said no. Do you want to know one outlet that said no to this story? Let's name some names, shall we? The Detroit Free Press. The Detroit Free Press, which is one of a very big national newspaper. Some of their coverage has been critical of the state of Michigan. They've done some coverage that has been good as far as Flint. I have my good energy necklace on, so it repels bad energy. So the Detroit Free Press, I sent them the story. And again, we got a ton of agencies on the record. We got Erin Brockovich on the record. I got all sorts of places on the record. I mean, Jen, would you say this story is airtight, or am I bloviating? There's another one that screwed us that I'm not going to get into yet because I have a special plan to out them. So the Detroit Free Press, I send them proof. It's in their inbox right now. I send them proof that the state of Michigan cheated on dozens of homes. I have tales of people where homes they cheated, where the homeowners have cancer and all sorts of illnesses. Detroit Free Press says to me, well, you know, other cities have problems with water in Michigan too. And, you know, what you found, although it's like against EPA regulations, it's not the first time it's been done. So, yeah. The fact that, like, you have evidence that they cheated on the water testing in dozens of homes. The fact that you have agencies on the record confirming that. The fact that you have evidence of them distorting paperwork with test results. All that's nice, but, like, you know, technically there's some other cities with problems, so yeah, good luck. I'm not exaggerating. So I kindly wrote back and I said, well, actually, what I found does not happen all over the place, because I haven't been able to find many places where what we found, and I don't want to give away the story too much, because frankly, my channels and my social channels and my digital channels are monitored by people in Michigan and other places. Jen could tell you horror stories about the end of last year and earlier this year. Oh, I'm monitored for sure. But I said to the Detroit Free Press, and I've said to other places, so let me get this straight. You're telling me that in your inbox right now, you have proof that the testing done in the city that is the poster child for an environmental calamity in America, in the city that is the poster child for the water crisis in America, you have evidence that testing, that those numbers were essentially cooked. The numbers were cooked to declare low lead levels. And you don't want to publish that because, well, some other cities have water problems. This is why I hate the corporate media. This is why we need status quo to grow. This is why we need not only funding, but ideas and an infrastructure. So we're not relying just on YouTube. So we're not relying just on Facebook. I mean, look at this. I've been live now. How long have I been live, Jen? I've been live, I think, for, almost an hour. And it's only up to 80 views on YouTube. Only up to 33 on Facebook. Well, I've got over 14,000 YouTube subscribers and over 20,000 on Facebook likes. So this isn't a pity party for me. This is to show you what we're up against. We're up against digital throttling, where half the people tell me they don't even get notifications for my videos. They don't even see my videos. Karl Malone, great basketball player, tells me I never get a notification. Paul, thank you for the $2. Hey, Detroit, monitor this with a middle finger. I hope they do. I mean, Ty, our photojournalist, is live with me. He doesn't get notifications. And I'll tell you the truth. I had a long talk with someone the other day. And by the way, I know this is a giant tangent. I'm going to get to Bernie in a minute. I had a long talk with someone the other day who knows engineering, who knows how to create technologies. And I said, how come nobody has come up with basically what YouTube used to be, only for independent media and outlets without censorship? Because I got to tell you, I'm not a marketing expert, but I am pretty sure there's a big enough market of people that would pay $5 to $10 a month to get Jimmy Dore, Lee Camp, Kyle Kalensky, Mike Figueredo, Lee Camp, hopefully me, Democracy Now! You know, if you want to lump in the Young Turks, go ahead. I'm pretty sure there's a big enough market out there that people will find a way or rebudget to pay $5 to $10 a month for uncensored, unsuppressed commentary and reporting. I'm pretty sure. Endo, what's your idea? I was just told to look at Endo's idea. Jen, how much do newspaper ad cost? Maybe we publish Flint News by GoFundMe to publish an ad page to send the news out. Endo, you're pretty smart, Endo. This is why we need not only the money from you guys, but the ideas. Oh, I like that. Putting it in a newspaper ad. Unfortunately, the newspapers are all corrupt and bought off too. Don't even get me started on the New York Times. Hey. Oh, actually, no, I will get started on the New York Times. This is fun. So I just outed the Detroit Free Press. Would you like me to out another outlet? Would you like me to out another outlet? I will out the New York Times and what they did at the next person who contributes to Super Chat. I will out what the New York Times did to this Flint story. The next person that contributes on Super Chat becomes a Patreon or PayPal. That's how I'm going to have to do it at this point. I will give you the behind the scenes if you help the funding. Because the the Detroit Free Press was bad, but holy shit, the New York Times was even worse. Because I have sent this story, at this point, to every outlet and their mother or father. And some of them actually have tried to steal it. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? So, I'll get to the New York Times, but, this is the marketing ploy. I'll get to the New York Times, the next Super Chat message. And by the way, on Facebook, definitely share this video. Facebook suppression, honestly, I don't quite understand. I know how YouTube's doing it. Facebook, I don't understand, because it seems like some people see me in their feeds and a lot of other people don't. That's the feedback I'm getting. So I don't understand Facebook, but thank you guys for tuning in and supporting any way you can. So Jordan, you need to start your own media company. Hey, MacArthur, why didn't I think of that? Have you been watching me the last 6 months? I kind of had a rocky end of 2017, I'm not going to lie. I'm trying to start my own media company, but to start your own media company, especially in the age of corporate digital suppression, it doesn't happen overnight. You don't only need funding, you need resources as far as staffing, marketing people, reporters, producers, camera people. You also need a way to get the content out when YouTube and Facebook and Twitter is suppressing the hell out of you. Ty and I were just in Flint in Chicago. We were going live to 60 people live or 20 people live on my Facebook. When I know for a fact, if YouTube, Facebook, and all these outlets hadn't changed their algorithm, we'd be out to a lot more people. So, there's realities. We want to go out into the field, but we need the funding to do it. And we also need extra funding so we could get more resources, because right now it's just Jen on marketing. She's brilliant, but it takes more. She could tell you. She's working 24/7 with migraines, by the way. But we need more as far as marketing people, social media people, and people with ideas for sponsorships. Thank you. Bami Fun left $5. I love your guys' YouTube names. I was only notified by Periscope, he said, but they're Twitter, so the future there is uncertain. Yes, and when Jack Dorsey, the head of Twitter, is going on, what did he go on? Sean Hannity to say we're not shadow banning. Well, we're not shadow banning. Yeah, that gives me comfort. I'll trust Jack talking to Sean Hannity that they're not shadow banning, please. And thank you, Thierry Nicole. Thierry Nicole just left $10. So, I come through in my word. Let me tell you about the New York Times, because Bami was kind enough to leave $5 in the super chat. So when I was in Flint, I'm kind of a hypocrite because I knock the New York Times all the time. Thank you, Guli. Oh, I can't pronounce this. Gulamel Le Scatour. Keep up hard work in independent media. Much love from your French viewers. Thank you, oui. That's all I know. I did spend a wonderful 9 hours in Paris during a layover. where I got super, super drunk on wine and cheese and listened to Coldplay while people watching in Luxembourg Gardens. I would love to come back to France, though, and spend some more time. So the New York Times, I'm in Flint. Jen is with me. We're knocking on 400 doors in 2 weeks. Some days we were working 16 to 17 hours, going up and down streets, knocking on doors, trying to find out information of how people's homes were tested. So when I got to a certain level where I knew this was a mega story, I said, you know what? I disdain the New York Times as far as politics. I think they're a mouthpiece for the establishment. But I'm not going to lie to you, to get this story out and actually put pressure on the state of Michigan with the findings I found, the New York Times would be a great outlet to get it out there with. Two things can be true at the same time. So I contact an editor for the New York Times, and I didn't send the story, but I did send what I have found in a couple bullets. So that editor says to me, I'm copying the bureau chief from Chicago, whoever's in charge of their Chicago office. And that person didn't respond to being brought into the conversation. So then my main source in Flint says to me, hey, some reporter from the New York Times just reached out to me asking if I knew anything about improper testing going on from the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality. So literally this editor took my notes, took what I found. I didn't send it to the New York Times as a tip. I sent it a pitch to be published in the New York Times. I even said, I'll co-byline it with news. You put my name with somebody from the New York Times who did nothing on the story. I don't care. If it makes you happy, we could co-byline it. So they literally took my notes and my reporting, gave it to one of their reporters, who then started trying to find stuff on it. And then the woman, Monica was her name, had the audacity to get back to me and say, yeah, we at the New York Times, we have reporters that follow up on Flint from time to time. So, thanks, but we'll follow up from here. So let me get this straight. I have just sent you a mega story on environmental genocide and an environmental cover-up going on in the poster child for the water crisis. And instead of talking to me about it and maybe thinking of ways we could collaborate so you, the New York Times, get a lot of credit, you could ask Jen. Some places, I have even offered to take my name off the story if it was an issue with me. Believe it or not, I just want the truth to get out there for the people of Flint. But New York Times, they pass it off to a reporter. That reporter starts making calls on it, and and I followed up again now that I have a major federal agency on the record confirming my findings. Never responded. They're too busy, reporting what Kellyanne Conway, what kind of dressing she had on her salad. Art said, everyone gets paid not to do the right thing. Art, that is similar to the next book I want to write. That is similar to the title of the next book I want to write. You know what the title of that book would be? It's not very original, but it's very true. Title: Everyone is full of shit. Everyone is full of shit. ... Like everyone. And I've learned that the hard way the last year of my life. But let me tell you something. Just about everyone's full of shit. The media, journalists, definitely the politicians, even the garbage man. Everybody's full of it. Everybody's a fraud. I'm sure I'm a fraud sometimes. Everyone is full of it. So as we go on in subsequent days, I will maybe report more behind the scenes of all of us. Honestly, I am writing a book, as you know. So if you're not a Patreon to that either, what are you doing? I'm about to release chapter 12, I think, over the next week or so, of Corporate Con Job. But I think I'm going to write another book about everything that's happened recently. Because you guys, honestly, you guys would be stunned, absolutely stunned, if you even knew the half of it. If you even knew the half of it, as far as how phony people are, especially in the media, even among progressive media in many cases. So many people are just out to be retweeted, are just out so they could be the ones associated with the social justice. Johnny Nice, if you want to get views, let your female coworkers live stream Fortnite. Then add in some Flint news whenever they're taking a break from gaming. Fortnite? I don't know what that means, but I don't have to let my female coworkers live stream. I beg them to live stream. Unfortunately, Jen is constantly busy doing the marketing and trying to build this business, and Sam has a full-time job, so she live streams when she can around that. Trust me, I would love for for my great coworkers, including Ty, Jen, Sam, Ty. I've been pushing them to go live because I'd like more faces on here. Definitely more. Moose Gal. Jordan, thanks for coming to my state and covering the non-violence rally in Chicago. Will you do any investigating, reporting on lead in the water in Illinois? Yeah, absolutely. And I did an interview with alderman candidate Diane Daleiden, which you probably didn't see because YouTube is suppressing all my content. So go check that out. She's a alderman candidate for the 40th ward in Chicago, and she has been out front hollering about the lead crisis, which is a crisis in Chicago. Termay, thank you for the $5. Me 8 years ago. Tammy Duckworth, a good lefty. Me now, Tammy is Duckworthless. Well, I'm not going to say she's Duckworthless. She's a veteran. I think she's pregnant too, so I don't want to comment too critically. But I don't agree with her. This whole nonsense about Ocasio Cortez, Bernie style, progressivism, socialism won't work in the Midwest. That's BS. Stable Genius, Jordan doesn't know what Fortnite is. Damn, Jordan doesn't have his finger on the pulse of social media. Stable Genius, you would be surprised how little I have my finger on the pulse of. I have my finger on the pulse as far as corruption, on the revolving door between our media, our government, our corporations, the big banks, and the lobbyists. MacArthur, Jordan, you should come to New York City. We also have problems. Is this your first time watching MacArthur? Because I live in New York City. I live in New York City. I start my live streams every day talking about how hot it is in New York City. I live in New York. But yes, go watch. I did an interview with Diane. And if you go on this YouTube channel to playlist, you can see my reporting from Chicago recently, from Flint, from Virginia, where I covered the Mountain Valley Pipeline. We're trying to get out to more places, but funding is an issue. I'm not going to lie to you. It's the truth. And we've had people, like amazing people. I mean, one person has left $1,000 in PayPal. That has literally allowed us to stay longer in places. Some people have left a few $100s. Even if that's not you and you don't have that kind of money, any contributions are welcome. Trust me. And you know what? It's definitely harder having to do it. It's definitely harder having to do it this way, but I wouldn't want to do it any other way because right now I am finally free to do things the way I feel the need to be done. I'm not going to comment on other places I was at, but I am finally free to cover what I feel needs to be covered without restriction and execute my vision and Jen's vision, which is similar to mine. Jordan, I live in public housing and we have problems with our water system. MacArthur, email Jordan at protonmail.com. Email Jordan at protonmail.com. Let me know more. So, before I end, because I did go on one hell of a tangent, I do want to point out the continued attack on Bernie Sanders. Because it's not just about Bernie. It's an attempt to make sure, the media wants to make sure that they get a Cory Booker or a Kamala Harris or a Kirsten Gillibrand or a Joe Biden in office, so that nothing actually changes in the country, and you know they could have either Trump who gives them profits or a neoliberal who doesn't chip away at their profits. That's the whole game. Media and their parent companies either want Trump. They say he's awful and he's a fascist and a dictator and unprecedented, but they love the ratings that come with the circus show that they're putting on. So they either want Trump because it keeps their profits surging, or they want Joe Biden, because Joe Biden's not going to raise taxes on corporations. Joe Biden's not going to turn around the deregulation on the media. Bernie would do both of those things. So, this is from Yahoo. Last week, New Orleans hosted the annual convention known as Netroots Nation, which started as a fringe gathering of the digital left in 2006 and has become a staple of mainstream Democratic politics. The celebrity senators Cory Booker and Kamala Harris were there this year to rev up the crowd. So was their colleague Elizabeth Warren, who sent the House into a full-throated war. Tim Ryan, the Ohio congressman who's been critical of his party's older, more coastal leadership, offered up a partisan speech and was rewarded with a rousing response too. I guess he failed to mention in that speech that he's for fracking and doesn't mind giving tax cuts to wealthy people. I digress. One 2020 hopeful who wasn't there was Bernie Sanders. Apparently, the party's socialist animal had a scheduling conflict. Socialist animal? Can you be any more subtle or not so subtle in your visceral hate of Bernie Sanders? Jesus. Socialist animal had a scheduling conflict. He was out in the wilderness with his fellow apes. More likely, though, Sanders simply didn't feel the need to compete for activist affection anymore. The anti-establishment, anti-capitalist movement he ignited 2 years ago is now a raging wildfire among the party's base. Oh my God. And Sanders spends a lot of his time showing up for grateful candidates in local races. He and his supporters, along with some of my colleagues in the media, assume that Sanders will enter the presidential field this time as a clear favorite. He won't end up that way. Because next time out, Sanders won't have an entire stage to himself, with all that space to bask in the adoration of frustrated activists. This will feel more like being packed into the green room of the senior home talent show, with some guy practicing accordion sales on the sofa next to you. So not only has this Yahoo writer compared Bernie Sanders to animals, he is now practicing ageism, calling Bernie Sanders a senior citizen at a senior talent show. Okay. I can't wait for him to write the same story about Joe Biden using that language. And right now, at a time when Democrats are frantically searching for the anti-Trump, Bernie is starting to look strangely like a reverse image of the president instead. Oh my God. Let's go back for a moment to the Democratic Party of the 1980s, which, as regular readers know, is a period I chronicled in my last book. After shocking the party's establishment and very nearly wresting the nomination from Walter Mondale in 1984, Gary Hart was the Sanders of his moment. Everyone assumed he'd be the nominee next time around. As a former campaign strategist himself, however, Hart understood that he would be endlessly bedeviled by what his team dismissively called the New Garys, a lineup of first-time Democratic hopefuls who fashioned themselves after Hart and appropriated his language and his ideological appeal. And with that, I don't have to read any more of this bullshit because this author is so clueless. And he is so clueless. Thank you, Daniel, for the $2. Upping my Patreon. Keep up the good work. Thank you. Not going to read the last part, but I get your point. First of all, does this guy actually think that Bernie Sanders supporters and other progressives are stupid enough to think that Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, Kirsten Gillibrand, and all these Johnny-come-latelys to the progressive movement who all of a sudden are stopping taking PAC money and corporate money? Has he ever been to Bernie Sanders rallies? Have you ever been to Bernie Sanders headquarters? Has he ever been to progressive movement protests? Part of what was really something to me on the 2016 campaign trail, I'm not saying this because I'm a progressive and I support Bernie Sanders. I'm saying it was because it was true. What was always really, really eye-opening to me was how much more intelligent and in the know and could smell BS a mile away people at Bernie Sanders rallies were compared to Hillary Clinton rallies and definitely Trump, Ted Cruz, and those rallies. Bernie Sanders supporters and progressives at these rallies could smell BS. They could smell when someone is not authentic. They could smell when someone is jumping on to Bernie's policies but doesn't truly believe it and cannot be trusted to carry them out if and when they became president. Progressives are smarter than Yahoo's Matt Bai thinks they are. Progressives know Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, Kirsten Gillibrand could say whatever the hell they want now, but they haven't been saying it for 40 years. And we have not actually seen them as president or congressman or senator actually change their votes, actually shun away the donors for a long enough period, actually take morally and ethically courageous stands when it wasn't easy to do, when it wasn't politically in vogue. So this author, like the political author yesterday says, socialism is drowning, socialism is dead, and Bernie is dying. Not literally, but the movement. Now this guy's saying because it's going to be a crowded field, Bernie won't stand out. I actually think Bernie's going to stand out even more because it's going to be a crowded field, because all of these people in that crowded part are all the same. They all are now talking the progressive talk that their record does not match up. Joe Biden voted for NAFTA. Joe Biden voted for tax deregulation and tax cuts for Wall Street traders. He voted for the Iraq War. He voted to deregulate the military, deregulate the media. He voted for welfare reform. He voted for the crime bill. I mean, I could go on and on and on. He voted for all of the Clinton goodies. Cory Booker has taken more money, I think, other than Chuck Schumer, who's taken more money from Wall Street than Cory Booker. And now he's, reborn? Please. Same thing with Kirsten Gillibrand. Kamala Harris doesn't have as much of a record, but I know what her record is as Attorney General of California. The Black Swan says, damn, you're talking sense, Jordan. Think I might be a Patreon again. Give it to me, Black Swan X. I try to talk sense every day. It's hard, but I try. So it's just ridiculous. These corporate media takes, it is all in an effort to defeat Bernie before he even announces he's running, and he might not even run. I mean, please, for the love of God, people, see what's going on, which is why independent media is more important than ever. Listen, I'm not going to keep saying it. If you can support me financially, great. But if it's not going to be me, support any independent media. Because let me tell you something. This is not going to be this is not going to be some little cherry on the top of the cake that they're doing. This is the cake. They're going to try through distraction, deflection, distortion, misdirection, and falsehoods to bury the progressive movement, to make Bernie look like a radical, and to make anyone else that runs that's a progressive look like a radical. They're going to make them look like they want communism reincarnated in America. They're going to make them look like Hillary Clinton tried to make him look. That's just unrealistic. That's just unrealistic. They're not going to get into the endless war and the money we spend on that, which is now $700-something billion. What is the military budget anymore? I don't even know. It just went up to $700 billion, I think. I mean, for God's sakes, man. And they're going to do everything they can to make sure that those older voters that watch CNN and MSNBC and in large part read the New York Times or the Washington Post get scared that if you vote for Bernie, you're going to get Trump again. Even though Bernie is the most popular politician in the United States. Let me say that again. Bernie Sanders is the most popular politician in the United States. Do you think if Cory Booker was polling as the most popular politician in the United States, you might hear that on Rachel Maddow? Do you think you might see that in Politico every single day? We got a new Patreon. Thank you, Linda Mitchell. New $5 Patreon. Appreciate it, Linda. Thank you for keeping me independent. The more new Patreon supporters we get, the more even one-time contributions via PayPal, paypal.me/statusquo. The more we get in Super Chat, the more Ty and I could get into the field. The more Jen could advertise and market and make sure people know this exists. The more we could build out our website, which is almost launched. So thank you for everyone doing that. Bottom line, we're going to need independent media. Oh, the Black Swan, that's you. Thank you. We're going to need more independent media to get the truth out. I was very fortunate at the Young Turks. At most of these rallies, I was one of the only national media there that was actually interviewing Bernie supporters, that was actually interviewing progressives at these rallies. I'm not saying that because I'm great. I had the money to do it from the Young Turks. Thank you, Gabriel, for I'm still trying to figure out what 100 in Sweden translate. But thank you, Gabriel, for your contributions as always. We need independent media to make sure we counter the lies, to make sure we counter the truth. And that's going to involve getting out there, not just if Bernie runs again, but at all of these things, to show that Medicare for All would save us money, to show the depleted war zone of cities that are lacking investment because we're spending all the money on tax cuts for the rich, tax cuts for corporations, endless war. All over the country, we're at war with 7 or 8 countries right now. So I'm going to keep doing it. Every day is going to be a different story. Yesterday, I don't know why, we had 150 viewers. Now it took an hour or something to get up to 80. It's no rhyme or reason with YouTube. All I know is I know YouTube pretty well. While I was at the Young Turks, I was very fortunate to build a successful channel at TYT. And I know for fact, with the level of subscribers we have to this channel, we should have more viewers live and we should have more viewers after the fact. So please, 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 even though it doesn't always work because they're lying to me, YouTube is lying to me. Make sure you have clicked the bell next to subscribers. And when you click on the bell, an option should come up, all notifications, sub notifications, whatever. Click all notifications. Facebook, it's in your settings as well to click to make sure you see when I'm live and you see when our videos are. It's not always going to work because I think these corporate social channels are purposely screwing us. And Jimmy's talked about it, and Kyle's talked about it, and Mike's talked about it, and Jamal's talked about it, and the list goes on. Erica, thank you, $10. Can't thank you guys enough. And I'm sorry to Lauren Steiner and others if you don't like my radio, TV fundraiser style, but at the end of the day, we got to keep it real, folks. I need your support. If not, I'm just going to be another blowhard, always coming to you from my apartment. I like those blowhards, but my passion and what we're trying to do and what Jen and I believe in and what Ty believes in is getting out there and showing you what's happening, being with the people, and also for me to stay true to who I am and for me to be able to report things to you that you don't know about and you're not getting anywhere else, I need to know. I didn't honestly know how bad it was in Chicago until I sat down and talked to activists for a week. I didn't know how bad it was in Chicago until I talked to a black 17-year-old who told me he feels like a target in his own community. You could read stories on the internet. You could see death counts of people killed on a weekend. A lot of times you don't know until you're there and you're in the community and you're talking to the people. Ty has said it and I say it. We need to be out with the people. And that's what we're trying to do here. So, thank you for watching. I'm going to be live again tomorrow, hopefully around the same time. And we're going to keep going live. Again, you know how to support us. Either Patreon, either PayPal, and Super Chat here. Jordan, focus on other issues, but not UFO disclosure. Yeah, I'm not big on the UFO thing. I wish I could use PayPal to donate, and it's strange why I cannot. Talk to Jen if you're having issues. I don't know anything about that. But thank you guys for watching. Share these videos, and make sure you go after the fact, because there's probably a whole lot of videos that we've uploaded that you didn't actually see. Have a good day.